poor little Arsenal guys. Oh my! Yeah, go cry with Piers Morgan, okay? Hello, sunshine. I'm Alexi, Lalas, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This show will be talking Pulisic, baby, Americano, Man City bias, Bora, FIFA Legends, MLS playoff picture, Reagan, MLS compare and contrast, Club World Cup, and so much more. But first, joining me as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox Soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, how you doing on this Monday, September 23rd in the year 2024?
I'm doing well. Welcome back, my friend.
Thank you.
Keith Costigan and I have been talking for years about taking a trip down to Monterrey, Mexico to go see a Tigres or a Rayados game. I've heard great things about that city. It's supposed to be a lot of fun.
Really interesting city. And for those that maybe are joining us for the first time, yes, I was down in Mexico, down in Monterrey, one of the locations for the 2026 World Cup, including Monterrey, Guadalajara, and Mexico City. I was in Monterrey. They brought a bunch of FIFA Legends down to play a game and obviously to bring attention to Monterrey, less than 2 years away from the World Cup. Really pretty. I'd never actually been there. I've been to a bunch of places in Mexico. Never been to Monterrey. The mountains are incredible there. Great food, a great city. The stadium that we played in is awesome. I will, at the end of this show, give you a much more in-depth type of analysis and let you know about the experiences on and off the field because it was wonderful. I will say this, Mosse, down there, a lot of the talk, and there are a lot of FIFA people down there, and obviously looking forward to 2026, was relative to next summer, the summer of 2025. And we know that the Club World Cup is happening here in the United States. And there is a lot of angst, I'm comfortable saying right now, as to what it's going to look at. They're asking me, what's going to happen? I say, I don't know. I mean, we don't know. We've never done it this big. And evidently, I think this week we're going to find out the actual locations of where the games are going to be played. Rumor is that up there in Pasadena at the Rose Bowl, that's going to be one of them. But they're worried. They haven't sold the broadcast rights yet. And again, if you build it, they will come. Or will they? So anyway, we'll see about that. But there was a lot of talk about that and so much other stuff that went on. And like I said, at the end of our show, I'll give you a little bit more from that. Have you watched anything, my friend, other than your Wolverines?
You want to go there?
Yeah, I want to go there. I want to give you a little moment.
Yeah, for people who don't know, virtually everyone who works behind the scenes on this podcast went to USC. So this was a very important game for my sanity on Saturday, and we somehow pulled it out. I think it's just a random blip in what is still destined to be a very disappointing season, given our quarterback situation. But nevertheless, for 1 week at least, we came up with a W.
How is it possible that the Wolverines of Michigan cannot, especially in this day and age where you just kind of pay for people, right, into the portal and all that kind of stuff, can't find a quarterback? Nobody wants to be a quarterback for the Michigan Wolverines?
It's astonishing. Michigan is the only team in America in the year 2024 that any passing play they run feels like a trick play. Just a normal drop back pass is like, oh, we're getting frisky here. I've never seen anything like it.
Oh, my goodness. And so this was actually an upset of sorts in that evidently USC was supposed to win this game. Although, is this the first game in the new format, I guess, or the new conference that USC is part of?
It was USC's first Big Ten game, yes.
Oh, wow. All right. Well, congratulations to your Wolverines. Did you watch anything, my friend?
So, as I mentioned last time, I have several shows going on right now, from industry to My Brilliant Friend to Slow Horses. But I do want to mention a show I recently binged.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Blue Lights. I watch it on Amazon Prime. It's a cop show based in Belfast, Northern Ireland, which is garnered comparisons to The Wire, which, for me is the ultimate compliment because The Wire is my favorite TV drama of all time. And I must say, Blue Lights is very good. I highly recommend it. Now, there have been 2 seasons of it, and there are 2 more to come, so you're going to have to wait a while. But when it's all said and done, I'll let you know. It is a show worth watching.
Okay, I got 2 things. I actually went to the movie theater for the first time in a long time. I went and saw the Reagan movie. It was okay. Dennis Quaid did a commendable job as Reagan. I thought it was a little bit aloof in the way that he portrayed him. It was much more interesting from a historic perspective to actually go through and either kind of relive because I lived through a lot of that stuff in that time, or just to kind of see what was going on in the world. So that for me was more interesting than the actual acting and the actual story that played out. So it's okay. It's not great. I saw that, and I will say I'll talk later this week because I will be done by then. I'm in the middle of the Menendez brothers thing over there on Netflix. It's really good. I really enjoy it. So, I'm sure I'll be done with that by the time we next speak. All right, my friend, should we light this candle?
Let's do it.
Where shall we start?
Before we get into our European weekend review, we have a little bit of U.S. men's national team news to report. Mauricio Pochettino's first competitive matches in charge will be a two-legged Nations League quarterfinal tie in November. And we found out today the home leg will be in St. Louis.
Ooh, all right. Well, that's cool for the team, and certainly I would think, knock on wood, Josh Sargent is healthy because he gets to go home there. And what St. Louis has, I guess, become in the modern day of soccer, because St. Louis has always had a tradition and a history of soccer, but certainly with MLS coming and what they have done there, it's a reignited type of city when it comes to the way that they look at soccer and the experience that they give. So hopefully that translates to the national team. All right, that's cool. That's good news. I'll be interested to see what that looks like. That would be the second window from Mauricio Pochettino.
Correct.
After the first two games will be friendlies, Mexico and
Panama.
That's right. And then it remains to be seen who is going to the opponent, but the first game will be away of that second window, and then the second game at home in St. Louis, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good news. Where should we go now that has actually happened on the field?
In terms of some of the players that we expect to be featuring for the U.S. in those games and what they did this past weekend, we'll begin at the San Siro, where AC Milan claimed a thrilling 2-1 win over Inter in the derby. Christian Pulisic opened the scoring 10 minutes in. Di Marco equalized later in the first half, and then Gabbia won it late in the second half. Pulisic continuing his incredible start to the campaign. Remember, days earlier, he had scored against Liverpool in the Champions League, and now he scores against Inter. 5 straight games with a goal contribution. What a player.
Oh, he is flying right now. Whatever he is eating, whatever he is doing, don't mess with a streak, my friend. Also should be noted, this was one of these situations where both teams play in the same stadium. So this was an AC Milan away game. So they get the away win. Huge in terms of what AC Milan needed, what the coach needed, and certainly when it comes to Christian Pulisic, I think it can be argued that he is, certainly one, and even argued the best player playing right now in Serie A in terms of his production, whatever form, whatever you want to call it. The goal that he scored, I mean, he shot the gap, went right down the gut in the middle, and you could see it in his eyes when he brought the ball down and controlled it, where this parting of the Inter C right there, and with his ability to control the ball and push it ahead and let the ball do the work, and then his quickness and ultimately time it to perfection at the end with the toe poke putting it in. So happy for Christian Pulisic. We're continuing to talk. It almost seems like every week now, because of his production, we are talking about how well it is going for him at AC Milan. Long may it continue to go for him, and hopefully he can translate some of that now under the new era with Pochettino when he comes back to the U.S. men's national team.
This is arguably the best form of his career, though don't sleep on how good he was after the COVID restart at the tail end of his first season with Chelsea, but certainly very good right now. The sour note from a U.S. perspective, Yunus Musa, once again an unused sub. He seems to have really fallen down the pecking order there.
Yeah, we've talked about, Musa, falling off and the trajectory that he was on. I still believe that we haven't seen Yunus Musa's ceiling, and it might just be a situation where he is at a place where it's not going to work for him, in which case we need him playing, because I don't think we're ever going to see that ceiling if he's in a situation like this. And I don't think that this is as good as it gets for Yunus Musa, but it doesn't matter what I think. It's ultimately what the coach thinks.
Juve Napoli 0-0. Weston McKennie, remember, had started and scored in the Champions League win over PSV. Started again here, so his situation is completely turned around. And Timmy Weah came on as a sub at the start of the second half. So both Americans very much in the mix at Juve right now.
Yeah, and I think it's well, I'm not sure it's turned around, but it's, a good couple of weeks here, especially and I think I said a couple shows ago that I was worried that this did not look like a situation where this was just a moment or a blip or a rut that he couldn't get out of. And I probably shouldn't have doubted Weston McKennie because time and time again, when he is in these situations, he somehow finds a way to prove his worth, show his value, and find a way back on the field. I thought that the Champions League was going to be a type of a blip start and appearance, but it seems that they're continuing on. And I think really what you're seeing is the practical reality of a really talented player that can help you win, even if you don't like him for whatever reason. He might not do this or might not do that. The good far outweighs the bad. The contractual stuff off the field, ultimately it's about winning. And I think he is just again making it difficult to keep him off the field, which is what you want from any player when they get put to the bench, when they get set to the side. It's to put your nose down and work. And when you get those opportunities, make the most of them. And he's certainly doing that. I'm not ready to say that he's out of the woods, but given his past, I think he probably deserves the benefit of the doubt and more of a benefit of the doubt than I might have given him over the last couple of weeks.
Before we depart Italy, Gianluca Buzio scored for Venezia in their 2-0 win over Genoa. Speaking of U.S. midfielders scoring, we go to the Netherlands next. PSV claimed a 3-1 away win over Fortuna Sittard. Malik Tillman found the back of the net twice, continuing his incredible start to the campaign.
Can I just take a real quick jump back to Serie A just to ask you a
Sure.
question? Because I'm always interested in the way that you see things in the moment. Where does this Serie A, because I know people have said, relative to Christian Pulisic or anybody else, oh, yeah, but it's not the AC Milan that it used to be. It's not the Serie A that it used to be. And we get that, but there has been a advancement and an improvement over the last couple of years. So where do you see Serie A in 2024 right now?
I would go Premier League 1, La Liga 2, and then Serie A battling with the Bundesliga for number 3. It's obviously not the heyday of Serie A when you played there, but after really sinking to some low depths, I think in the last few years it's sort of bounced back and is heading back in the right direction. You had Inter reach the Champions League final in 23. They actually performed the best of any league in the coefficient last season, hence why they got that extra Champions League spot. So I think things are heading back in the right direction.
So anybody that's downplaying this performance and these performances from someone like Christian Pulisic relative to what they perceive as a lack of quality, either from AC Milan. And look, everybody recognizes that it's not the AC Milan of the 80s and 90s and that type of team, or even at the times the aughts. But anybody downplaying that is just being grouchy.
Yes, and as I mentioned, he scored against Liverpool in the Champions League, so he did it against a top
Yep.
Premier League team as well.
All right. Just wanted to get that in. All right, Eredivisie.
Well, so as I mentioned, Malik Tillman scored twice, continuing his impressive start to the campaign. The sour note here, Ricardo Pepi once again did not start, came on late as a sub, but I saw a lot of hand-wringing about his situation this past weekend, even folks like Matt Doyle chiming in on X, so there is some concern about Pepi.
Concerned that this is a rut that he's not going to get out of it, and at least he's getting on the field. So, but the whole point, as we've said before, for him to make this move was that he would get consistent starting, and obviously from a goal scoring perspective, reps that would make him better. I'm not ready to say that he's going to waste this next year, but this is not the way that he drew it up, and this is not the way that I think people envisioned it going for him.
And his agent did say at the tail end of last season, one more season like this, and he's probably going to have to leave. So we are kind of heading in that direction.
I mean, who knows? Maybe even in January. You never know.
Yep. Some better news on the American center forward front. We go to Ligue 1, where Monaco claimed a 3-1 home win over Bob Bradley's former club Le Havre. Folarin Balogun started and scored his first goal of the campaign, and this is after he had come on as a sub and provided a spark in a Champions League win over Barcelona on Thursday. So his season all of a sudden picking up.
It's good. It's good. You don't need me to tell you that when our goal-scoring core of players that we are looking at for that still kind of up for grabs position from the national team, when they're scoring, it's a good thing. And there was some concern a little earlier about what Balogun has done. Now, having said that, I still don't think that he is necessarily the answer right now. But him coming in to a new era with Pochettino, on a good note from a club perspective, I think can only serve him well going forward. Did you mention Bob Bradley? Because have you seen that he was they just agreed to part ways. Bob Bradley with his Staubach team that I think had gotten relegated and was not going well for him. So Bob Bradley is back on the market out there.
Absolutely. We'll
All
keep
right,
an eye
what
on
else?
that. In the Premier League, Fulham had a nice win over Newcastle 3-1. Anthony Robinson, as usual, played all 90 minutes. Jedi has been in the news. Remember, he was linked to some big clubs this past summer, ended up staying at Fulham. And now the English media reporting that Liverpool and Manchester United are still tracking him with an eye towards possibly signing him in one of the upcoming windows.
But haven't we seen this movie before? I mean, hasn't this been a consistent and for good reason, because there's many people that you talk to that say he has been, the best and most, or at the very least, the most consistently good left back that's not playing at one of the elite teams, and so that is out there and available, and that a lot of people believe still has room to grow. And yet I feel like every single year we're doing it. Is this the moment when that move actually happens for him, or do you think he's found his place and we're seeing the best version of him, and maybe it'll be a bridge too far somewhere else?
He needs to be careful. Certainly with Liverpool, I don't think Andy Robertson is going anywhere, so he'd be signing up to be a backup most likely. So then you get into that. Is starting every week for Fulham better than being a backup for Liverpool?
And his obviously his defensive responsibilities are first and foremost, but he's also doing it at Fulham, which is not an elite team that is going to be at times under pressure, and yet oftentimes what the wow factor with him is his ability to get forward and back, but his ability to push up and get forward. So it would be interesting if and when he goes to a more elite team that has more of the ball, that is more attacking, that has more confidence, what he looks like in a even more type of advanced position and in a situation where he is even more encouraged to go forward. But remains to be seen whether they're going to see it. I don't know. I think it would be a good. I think many teams would love to have that consistency on that left hand side.
The big one in the Premier League this past weekend, Manchester City Arsenal finished 2-2 at the Etihad. Haaland scored early in the first half his 10th Premier League goal of the campaign and his 100th goal for City in all competitions. Lovely assist by Savinho on that play. Arsenal turned it around in the first half. Calafiori with a great strike, and then Gabriel headed in a corner. Late in the first half, Trossard got himself sent off. More on that in a minute. Arsenal down a man, bunkered down the whole second half. Almost held out for the win, but last kick of the game, John Stones equalized, so it finished 2-2. Some terrible news for City, though. Rodri came off injured early in the first half, and we've come to find out it's an ACL. He is out for the season. That is a massive loss. Keep in mind, Rodri is a guy who had been front and center talking about how players are playing too many games and they might have to strike, and it's leading to a lot of injuries, and then this happens to him. We'll get to the red card in a minute because I'm sure you have plenty to say on that, but any thoughts on this game apart from the red card?
So a couple of things. Let's go back to front. The Rodri injury is huge because of how important he is. I don't think it had anything to do with wear and tear or being tired. I think it was just one of those things from a physical perspective. And I'm not saying that him championing less games and fighting for what he feels is right relative to the physical well-being of players isn't important. And let's be honest, he's going to have a lot of time to do that right now, but I don't think this particular injury had anything to do with that. But from a practical perspective, look, this is still arguably the best team in the world. There is still plenty of depth, but they are going to have to adjust because how important he has been to that team. The first Haaland goal was wonderful. To your point, the ball through, and again, him letting the ball do the work and getting there and toe poking it through. But it showed he can score in a bunch of different ways. But when he gets that in his sight, it is look out, and he just gobbles up the ground. In general, when it comes to this game, I'm not sure, because these are the two that we know are going to be fighting all the way to the end. I'm not sure who is happier. If you just looked at the face of the players of Man City, they get that goal at the end. They seemed like, oh, this was a great point. And yet I'm not sure it was. I mean, once that red card, we'll talk about the red card, happened, it was one-way traffic. I mean, it was insane. And so that they finally got that goal and got a point out of this against what is their major rival right now, I think that's commendable. But they were up a man, and they are Man City playing at home, and so I look at it in a much more negative way for Man City as opposed to, the seemingly cathartic type of reaction that a lot of them had.
Yeah, from a neutral's perspective, both De Bruyne and Odegaard were out injured, which hurt the quality of the game because each team was without its most creative midfielder. It was an odd match. Like 10 seconds in, Havertz clatters into
Did you see
Rodri. I've never
that?
seen an injury stoppage that early in the game. And then the Arsenal equalizer, Michael Oliver, it seemed like he had brought the players over to talk to them, and then he let Arsenal take it quickly. And so Kyle Walker was out of position. City was furious about that. But then let's get to the decision everybody's talking about. It's the second time in a matter of weeks that Arsenal have been burned with this. It happened with Declan Rice against Brighton. He was on a yellow card and kicked the ball away and got a second yellow. And then same thing happened here. At first, we all thought it was the foul, which that would have been ridiculous to show him a second yellow on the foul. But then you see the replay and him kick the ball away and they get a second yellow for that. And, I think people now have a little bit less sympathy for Trossard. I don't know. The Arsenal argument is that there's an inconsistency here. Other players are doing this and are not getting booked. But based on your post on X, you didn't feel too sorry for Arsenal after the Declan Rice incident, so I imagine you don't feel too sorry for them
No,
here.
I don't feel sorry. All right, so when they give you a yellow card, Mosse, what are they doing? I mean, it's literally in the laws. They are warning you. It is a warning. It is a, hey, if you do something like this again, you are in trouble. They're not kicking you out of the game, but they are telling you that you need to be on notice. So you have to play the game differently when you are on a yellow card. Whether you agree with the yellow card or not, it doesn't matter. You are on thin ice. I was talking to my brother earlier today as we were coming in about this play, but as it relates to the way the game is refereed. One thing that players will always do is scream and yell about consistency. They will always, especially when they feel they've been aggrieved, they will always say, all I'm asking for is consistency. Okay, well, the problem is that you have human beings with all of their baggage and their bias and their, whether it's momentary or ingrained, it doesn't matter. When you are talking about the game, you are talking about human beings that are making these decisions. And so, yeah, you can always point to something else in some other game and some other time and some other moment and say, well, but why didn't you do that? But that doesn't let you off the hook for violating the laws. You might not like the laws, and if you don't like the laws of the game, then go about changing them. But as long as they are there and you can read them, they are as clear as day, and I'm not saying that they're not subjective. It's buyer beware, and certainly if you are on a card, you need to understand that your behavior needs to be exemplary. You cannot afford to make a mistake. And, as an old player, I can sit there and I can grumpy old man it till I'm blue in the face. But I also recognize that you need to be able to adapt. You need to be able to adjust. And if I were on the field in the past, I would leave my feet. In the past, I would have no problem, no qualms making some of these tackles. But I know that today, I would say, you know what? I'm going to keep powder dry. I'm going to live to fight another day. And I'm going to beg off of whether it's a tackle and certainly throwing the ball away or doing something like that. And again, it's the whole speeding thing. There's 100 people speeding and you get pulled over. You can't say, yeah, but everybody else was speeding. No, you broke the law. You violated the law. And it doesn't mean that others haven't done it. It also doesn't mean that others haven't done it and not been caught for doing it. But that doesn't take away your responsibility for violating the law.
I have several Arsenal fans in my life who I might need you to put you in touch with them to explain what you just said, from Greg Bacani to Jason Carapesi, because some of the texts I was getting this weekend, they were absolutely furious.
So they feel that the world is against Arsenal.
Yes.
And this is relative to Man City and the Man City bias out there, and they are getting the benefit, the rub of the green, all that kind of stuff. Is that what they feel?
Yes.
Oh, poor little Arsenal guys. Oh my. Go cry with Piers Morgan, okay? You guys are gonna be just fine. You get plenty of calls, and you have no one to blame but yourself.
Now we have an AskAlexi question.
Hold on. Let me, we're still talking about this game, right?
Sure.
Just one more time. The Gabriel goal.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you think that it was legal?
Yes. I didn't see a lot of contact there. I think Ederson kind of made a meal of it. You think the pick on the goalkeeper was a bit dodgy?
Everybody's screaming and yelling about the picks that go on. As we know, in every single free kick, whether it's a corner kick or a free kick, you could find something to call. Both ways, by the way. It could be a penalty or it could be a foul the other way. Picks were not just suddenly invented. They are part of the game. You have to fight through it. Suck it up, buttercup out there. And especially when it comes to goalkeepers, all right, who are given the benefit of the doubt. Let's be honest, all right? When we talk about goalkeepers, we are always protecting them. And I'm not saying they don't need to be protected, but we are always protecting them. And we are saying, oh, yeah, it's a foul. Even at times where it's a straight up 50-50 challenge. So you get to use your hands. You are, protected, like I said, by everybody. And so if you can't make your way through the forest of people out there, and everybody has a right to stand in a position, okay? And just because you run into them doesn't even necessarily make it a pick.
And especially minutes earlier, Arsenal had another corner. They tried the same thing, and Ederson again tried to flop and draw a foul. Didn't get the call. Gabriel ended up with a free header, which he just missed. So Ederson was playing with fire by doing the exact same thing again the second time around, and he got burned.
Anyway, good game. It was a fun game to watch.
Yes, yes. We have an Ask Alexi question today asking about the atmosphere at an MLS game versus a European game. Well, arguably, the best atmosphere you'll find in South America is a Boca River game at La Bombonera, and we had that this past weekend. River Plate, who are once again managed by Marcelo Gallardo, came up with a 1-0 win. Manuel Lanzini scored the only goal. Boca equalized late, but it was chalked off after a long VAR review. So River take it. As long as we're in South America, I do want to mention quickly, the quarterfinals of the Copa Libertadores conclude this week. On Tuesday, River hosts Colo-Colo. It was 1-1 in the first leg. On Wednesday, you have two all-Brazilian matchups. Atlético Mineiro will look to overturn a 1-0 deficit against defending champions Fluminense. São Paulo will host Botafogo. It was 0-0 in the first leg. And then Thursday, Peñarol will look to protect a 1-0 advantage against Flamengo at home after they earned a shock first leg win at the Maracanã. Anything on anything I just said, South America, Boca River, etc.?
Well, for an environment that claims to be arguably the best in the world, obviously it didn't motivate the Boca team right there, right? I mean, if they're playing in the most incredible environment and obviously at home, it should be the proverbial 12th man, and more so given all of its allure and its history and all that kind of stuff. But obviously it didn't impact Boca. So congratulations to River.
So that was a little tease. We've got Ask Alexi coming up next.
All right, let's take a quick break. Come back. Like Mosse said, we'll have some Ask Alexi. Okay, welcome back. It's time for Ask Alexi, that part of the show where you send in your comments, questions, and concerns. You can use that hashtag AskAlexi. And if you're doing it over there on the social media platforms, keep in mind that our handle is SOTU with Alexi. Or you can call into our State of the Union podcast hotline, which is 657-549-2297, 657-549-2297. Mosse, what do the folks want to know today?
First up, a question on X. Inland Empire LA Galaxy Fanatics asks, honest question, Alexi. If you were cut by him meaning Bora Milutinović, and not made the U.S. squad in '94, where would you be now?
Ooh, interesting. So I actually saw Bora down in Monterrey, and he is, in his 80s and still sharp as a tack. We were joking because Bora famously made me cut my hair a long time ago. And the irony is that, now when I'm, trying to keep whatever hair I have left, he's still got a beautiful, gorgeous head of hair that he continues on. All right, so Bora Milutinović was our coach in the 1994 World Cup. I am sitting here today at this table with my good friend David and all of you good people here because of the decisions that he made, but more importantly, the chance that he gave me. So to your question, where would I be? I certainly wouldn't be here because at a time when he didn't have to believe in me, he did. Now, certainly I brought something to the to the table in terms of my talent, but you could absolutely make arguments that there were others that were more talented than me. I don't know, stronger, faster, whatever it ends up being. But here's a guy that saw something in me. And whenever I get asked about, national team opportunities, I say, you know what? It is beyond your control. You have to play as well as you possibly can. And then ultimately it's going to be down to a subjective decision by a human being. And in this case, I was lucky that Bora Milutinović saw something in me that he was used. Now, it wasn't out of the goodness of his heart. He recognized that there was something that I did on a consistent basis that if he could harness that, it could be used to his benefit to have a successful team. If he didn't do that, and this was over a 2-year period as we were getting ready for the 1994 World Cup, And the things he taught me on and off the field, I could just go on for hours and hours and hours. And he made me think about the game. He made me think about myself in a completely different way than I'd ever been asked to do. And ultimately, I became a better player, and I'd like to think that I became a better person, and I owe him, an incredible debt of gratitude for having faith in me. And this is, what coaches ultimately do. Some of them do have faith, some of them don't. And you might not be someone's cup of tea, and there's nothing you can do about it. You can work as hard as you possibly can, and that's the only thing that you can do. And whether they like you or not is up to them. I would, at that point, I would have gone back. I probably would have played indoor soccer because that was the only option that I had to me relative to soccer. I probably would have returned to college. I had left early from Rutgers University, ended up going back many, many years later and finishing in 2014. But I probably would have gone back to college and finished and got my degree. You would probably find me doing something that involved, I don't know, music. I was heavily involved in music at that time. Maybe teaching. I don't know, but I guarantee you that I would not have had the opportunities. Everything that came after the World Cup was relative to the opportunity that he gave me, on that stage to show what I could do. And all of those opportunities on and off the field came out of the World Cup. And so, like I said, I will forever be indebted. But I definitely wouldn't be here with you, Mosse. So you should thank Mosse. You should thank Bora for giving me the opportunity because this is how this comes about.
Bora has been in the news lately with the appointment of Pochettino and people referencing previous foreign managers of the U.S. team. Does he still follow the U.S.? Does he have any thoughts on Pochettino?
Yeah, we were talking about the fact that Pochettino, like we've talked about, does not have a lot of time. Bora was a man of the world when he was hired and had coached, in the World Cup before, and it was designed to give us a more international and global feel and to utilize his experience. And he also had the advantage of, like I said, 2 years of training day in and day out, twice a day oftentimes with the national team. Now those days have come and gone, and Pochettino certainly doesn't have that. I mean, we're talking in terms of windows right now, 9 windows, 18 games, a Gold Cup, that kind of stuff. So it's not a lot of time right now. And, the era has changed. I will say this. I think if you ask Bora, and I know he's biased like anybody else, which players on this particular national team that we have right now that Pochettino inherits, which of those players could play on his 94 team? I think he maybe says 1 or 2. Maybe. Maybe. That's how much he believed. I mean, he will readily admit that we didn't have the pathways, we didn't have the resources, and in many ways, we're not, quote, unquote, as good, but again, good is being subjective, and so I think he's, as the kids, do they still say stan? He stands for the 94 team in a way that, warms the cockles of my old redheaded heart.
I believe the origin of that term is an Eminem song in the early 2000s about a crazy fan,
Right.
Stan. So
Exactly. But I think I used it correctly. I'm
yeah, yeah.
sure I'm sure the internet will tell me if I didn't. What else?
Another question on X. This requires a little bit of context.
Okay.
So, somebody was lamenting the fact that the NYCFC Inter Miami game, Messi in front of a packed Yankee Stadium, was not available on linear TV. It was on Apple. And then some wise ass chimed in and said, "Well, if you're looking to attract casual fans, it might be better if they don't watch an MLS game. They'd be underwhelmed by it." You did not care for that remark, so you jumped into this conversation. You asked, "What's so underwhelming about an MLS game?" And so there were some responses to that. And one guy, Franken Sensei, said, "For a lot of teams in Europe, the history and culture of the club is in the songs of the fans. Is that the same in a franchise club?"
All right. So this is a kind of evergreen type of debate and conversation that we have. And I'll be honest with you, at times it's exhausting. Speaking of standing, I don't know if that's a word. I fully recognize and raise my hand that I wear MLS on my sleeve. It is La Cosa Nostra. I also recognize that there is plenty when it comes to MLS to criticize. And this is what irritates me a little, is that they're choosing, in this case, to criticize something that I don't think is legitimate, when there's so many other things that you could actually point to and have a valid criticism of MLS. But when it comes to the experience, I will save you the time Okay, because ultimately this culminated in the person saying, "You know what? I will go to an MLS game and I will tell you what my reaction is. I'm going to save you the time from going to it. It will not be like insert game, whatever it is, going to see Bayern Munich, going to see Manchester United, going to see uh, Celtic, whatever it ends up being. It inherently can't be. It will always be different. But in that difference, what irritates me is when people automatically just completely dismiss it. All right. The experience that you have at an MLS game is relative to the fact that it's coming from a different culture. So no matter what, it's going to be different. It doesn't mean, though, that it can't be as impactful, doesn't mean that it can't be as passionate, doesn't mean it can't be as colorful. And like I said, it doesn't mean that you can't have an experience that says, wow. And yes, it may be different in many, many ways, but I love that. I love the fact that the experience of going to a game, and while we're talking about MLS, I can just kind of, expand it out to the experience of going to a game in the United States, is American, as it should be. And don't come at me with, "Oh, but we can learn with the rest of the world." I don't think that there is a league in the world that has incorporated more international aspects in the business on and off the field than Major League Soccer and American soccer for that matter. And you can go with the structure, you can go with the names of the teams, the FCs and all that kind of stuff, the coaches, the players. So it's not as if we are, doing the American exceptionalism thing and completely ignoring and throwing away what the rest of the world does. As a matter of fact, we incorporate it, like I said, more than anybody else does. But ultimately, it is an American experience at the global game. And just because it's an American experience doesn't mean that it doesn't have value. And that's what gets me going. We have fan bases that are incredibly passionate. And by the way, much more diverse than the rest of the world. You go and see a game in New York City with the Pigeons over there. It's different than when you're going to Nashville or when you're going to Seattle, if you're going here in Los Angeles. And I love that. If you want songs, there's plenty of songs, right? If you want unique aspects, hell, we got an American soccer culture and climate and landscape where we got a freaking chainsaw going on at a game. We're ringing a bell over here. We're, slamming an anvil. There's all sorts of interesting, beautiful, eccentric, quirky things that, yes, make it different than around the world. But it doesn't mean that it's better or worse. And again, we've talked about this before, Mosse. If you're drinking Guinness in Ireland, or if you're having wine in France, or if you're having bagels in New York, it's relative to where you are. You've been conditioned to think that this is what it should look like. This is what it should sound like. This is what it should taste like, right? And so automatically, because of that, you said, well, this is lesser quality, or this is better quality out there. And again, you can find crap soccer played everywhere in the world, in any country, and in any league out there. We certainly don't have a monopoly on that. But again, this crapping on American soccer, in this case, the MLS experience, because it's not like Europe, I'm not buying that. I think it's complete BS. Yes, it's different, but it doesn't mean that it's worse.
You know who I found out this past weekend is a bit of a Euro snob?
Who's that?
Our producer, Kyla Morse.
Ooh.
There was an original version of this rundown which did not contain any sort of MLS weekend review. I made her add it, so we'll do that right now. That NYCFC Inter Miami game I referenced finished 1-1. Campana scored for Inter Miami, and then James Sands equalized late. Inter Miami inching closer to the Supporter Shield. 6 teams have clinched playoff berths, 3 in each conference. Inter Miami, Cincinnati, and Columbus in the East. The Galaxy, RSL, and Colorado in the West. LAFC struggling all of a sudden. They lost 3-1 to Dallas. Incidentally, we have 3 trophies on the line on Wednesday night. LAFC will host SKC in the U.S. Open Cup Final. Columbus will host Club America in the Campeones Cup. And Vancouver will host Toronto in the Canadian Championship.
I will actually be attending the Wednesday night U.S. Open Cup final, so I'm going to go out and check that out. Little coda to what we talked about before when it comes to MLS, um, and the whole experience and what we were talking about. We're down to the end game, if you will, of getting into the playoffs, and there are even teams right now that are not going to make the playoffs. You're talking about San Jose and Kansas City right now that are eliminated from going to the playoffs, and that line of demarcation is where we separate. Let's be honest, the good from the bad and the failure from the success when it comes to Major League Soccer, a league that, as we know, does not have relegation here. It is almost like a new lease on life, and it's the reality is that whatever you have done in the regular season, it's not that it doesn't matter, because what you have done in the regular season gets you the opportunity to play in this playoff type of situation. And those that are able to parlay good play from that regular season, those are the best teams that we have seen in history. But some people get that new lease on life, and you see a very, very different team come about it. But there are a lot of teams right now that are going to be fighting for places just in the playoffs, and then a lot of teams that are already in the playoffs are going to make the playoffs. They're fighting for seeding when it comes to the MLS playoffs.
One last MLS point. I've said this before. The next step for MLS in its pursuit of global credibility is for top national teams in the world to call up MLS players based expressly on their MLS form. In other words, a guy who wasn't in the national team picture before goes to MLS, does well, and gets called up. An example would have been if Germany had called up Hani Mukhtar a couple of years ago. I'm looking at what Evander is doing for Portland. Did you see that free kick this past weekend? Crazy game against RSL.
He's got a real shot at MVP with what he's doing.
15 goals, 18 assists, MVP contender. He's been one of the best players in MLS this season. He's an attacking midfielder, which is a position of need for Brazil, who are really struggling in World Cup qualifying. I don't think he's going to get called up. I'm not even saying he should be called up. I would just be curious to go inside Dorival Jr.'s head and know if it's something he's even thought of. Has it crossed his mind? Is he even remotely aware of who Evander is and what he's doing? Or is calling up an MLS player a non-starter? Is it a league that he doesn't even keep an eye on? I'm just curious.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but the connection and the attention that has been paid over history and in the past to the Russian league relative to Brazilian players, right? So just because it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, doesn't mean that they don't see what's going on. I know that's a little different because it's a European league, but
No, but to your point, there are leagues out there that I don't think are necessarily any better than MLS that do get players called the Russian league, the Ukrainian league, but I think there's still something about MLS, a lack of acceptance in Brazil.
well, let me finish it here because it goes back to what we were talking about. I can defend MLS, and I will to the day that I die. Not blindly, not in a delusion. Like I said, there's plenty to be critical for, but this is this is perception. And so even if I defend it, it doesn't mean that it's not a problem for MLS. And this is what they have to overcome and what they have to change. And screaming and yelling about it, that can help a little bit, but sometimes it just takes time. But that there is that perception when it comes to the quality on the field, that there is that perception, what we talked about earlier, of the experience off the field, all right? That doesn't change the fact that you have to go and find a way to change that perception. And whether it's the fans, whether it's the people that are in charge and are paid to do it, or whether it's the media, all of the different things that you can do. I like to think that you do them because you believe that it is the actual truth, and showing people that, you know what, your perception isn't the reality, but it is still a business problem for MLS that they have yet to solve going forward. And until they do, they're not going to be that league of choice. They're not going to be one of the great leagues in the world, which I think they can. So I do think that they can overcome that. Anything else, Mosse?
That's it.
All right, let's take another quick break. When we come back, it's time for One for the Road. Like I mentioned, head down to Monterrey, and I'll give you some stories from them. All right, can't get enough of the van, which means that we are at the One for the Road portion. That moment when I give you a little background on something that's happened. All right, my One for the Road today is, like I mentioned, I went down to Monterrey, and it was a wonderful 4-ish days that culminated in a Legends game, Rest of the World versus Legends, Legends of the Rest of the World versus Legends of Mexico. And, so many wonderful, huge legends. I know I'm going to miss people, but Pirlo and Xavi and Puyol and let's see here. The list goes on and on and on. Diego Forlan and Didier Drogba. And then on the other side, you got Jorge Campos and Luis Hernandez, El Matador, and Borghetti, and Pavel Pardo, and again, the list goes on and on and on. And while the game was fun, and yes, you will be pleased to know, Mosse, that my bionic knee, after knee replacement a year and a half ago, held up well. I got about 20 minutes in. Jose Peckerman was our coach. Bora Milutinović was the coach of Mexico. Just a real fun day. For those that are watching, you can see some of the pictures that we have. It wasn't just a game. It was also, we went down and we visited a school, myself and Carlos Puyol. Carlos Puyol were talking in front of kids. I used my English, or my Spanish, my limited Spanish, and the kids used their limited English. It was fun. We had a good time there. We visited a shelter for abused kids. And so we did a lot of other stuff other than the game. And then obviously, wonderful food and wonderful events that we went to. And so, 1 minute you're sitting down with, having a bottle of wine with Yuri Djorkaeff and Didier Drogba, and Yuri's talking about his time at the Metro Stars in MLS. Now he's working with FIFA, and he's one of the advisors to Gianni Infantino. And then Didier Drogba, who we know has incredible MLS links, playing up there in Montreal, being a USL owner, and him talking about Will Trapp. He would bring up random names like, oh, that Will Trapp. I really, really like him as a player. Or sitting down with Diego Forlan and talking about not just his career, but his post-career and his ownership down in Uruguay of a team down there, and the realities and some of the challenges that he faces as an owner on and off the field. His tennis, he's a huge tennis player. He's ranked like 140th in the world in over 45. And I know that because we talked about tennis. My wife's a tennis player, and Diego Forlan she said, is my boyfriend going to be down there? She absolutely loves Forlan and will always love Forlan. So I got a picture with him. Jorge Campos showing up in his flip-flops, which is what he constantly does. There's a curiosity about what 26 is going to be. Obviously, we're promoting Monterrey as one of the three places down in Mexico, but in general, there's a curiosity about what it's going to look like. Obviously, the biggest World Cup that we have ever had, and it was just fun. John Terry was in the back line with me, but when you look up and you're passing it to Puyol or passing it to Pirlo, Gigi Buffon in goal is one of the nicest guys that you will ever meet. He actually, he goes, I was a Genoa fan growing up. And years ago when I was playing in Italy, we played Genoa in a one-off playoff game to stay in Serie A. And he brought that up to me, which was blowing my mind. But just one of the nicest guys you will ever meet. Brazilian, Julio Cesar in goal was there. His English is wonderful, by the way. So it was just all of these different experiences that we have, doing tequila at the end of the event, doing all this kind of stuff. And it was fun to see and fun to hang out with all of those guys. And I'm glad that they let me hang out.
Julio Cesar, Toronto FC legend.
That's true.
Reminisce about his MLS days. One of the pictures we showed was you with Del Piero, Pirlo, and Buffon, obviously three Italian legends. Mm-hmm. Del Piero and Buffon, you sort of just referenced it there, but they both broke into Serie A as teenagers in the mid-90s when you were there. Do you remember playing against them when they were kids just starting out?
Del Piero, I definitely remember playing, because also, if one thing that people don't know is he actually started at Padova, which was the team in Italy that I was playing for. So there were actually two Padovani in this in this picture. And as I mentioned, there's just languages flying all over the place. Obviously, Spanish and English and Italian and French, and the list goes on and on and on. But everybody had a really good time. It was fun on the field, but I think it was more fun just kind of hanging out with all of these incredible legends. So I'm glad to be a part of it. And we had a picture at the end, myself, Jorge Campos, and Dwayne De Rosario as kind of the three representatives. And by the way, all three with MLS ties and long histories when it comes to Major League Soccer. But as the three representatives for the three countries, because again, we're less than 2 years away from the World Cup and what it's going to be. I mentioned, the business talk was what next summer is going to be, but obviously 2026. And I'd never been to Monterrey. It's a really interesting and cool place.
Now, while you were away, myself and Stu Holden did a podcast together. Were you able to listen? Any thoughts? Any pointers for us?
Well, I am comfortable saying that in this case and in this moment, I'm not saying it can't happen in the future, that I did not get Wally pipped, all right? Mosse over the years has talked to me and taught me about the Wally Pip phenomenon out there. But I also will say thank you to Stu. Absolutely, I downloaded it and listened to it. It's fun when you go to different countries and you download things. The advertisements that they throw in are obviously in that language. So to hear our show with the Spanish language advertisements was kind of cool. So it was great. Thank you, Stu, if you're listening, for filling in. I thought he did a wonderful job, and it's always interesting. It was interesting to hear him talk about ownership, American ownership, and all that, because he certainly is knee deep in it when it comes to what's going on with Mallorca. All right, should we get out of here, my friend?
Yep.
All right, keep reviewing and downloading and rating and subscribing and doing all the different things that you do out there. Oh yeah, keep smashing the button over there on the old YouTube channel. Smash the subscribe button. Smash it 2 hands up and down. Bam, 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 bam. Keep punching the button over there on Spotify. And whether you're watching or whether you're listening or whether you're doing both of them, doesn't matter. This is how we give it to you, and we crank out the content for everybody out there. I hope you listened also to my interview that dropped last week with JT Batson. I thought that was interesting in what he did say, and at times maybe what he didn't say, but that was fun talking to him, and hopefully we'll talk to him going on in the future. All right, until later on this week, my friends, size the day.